You are listening to a special edition of Outside the Boards podcast celebrating Oak Brook Polo Club's 100th anniversary. I'm Danny O'Leary. Founded in 1922 by legendary businessman Paul Butler, the Oak Brook Polo Club is an American polo treasure and one of the oldest polo clubs in the United States. It was once the sport's epicenter for elite professional polo and served as home to the U.S. Open Polo Championships for 24 straight seasons and other prestigious international and national polo tournaments. Paul's primary and enduring passion was horsemanship. In 1921, Paul and his father, Frank Osgood Butler, planted the first polo field and brought polo to Oak Brook. It was in 1927, standing on the international field at Meadowbrook Polo before the start of the Westchester Cup, Paul prophesied, "Someday all this will be gone and the center of polo will be Oak Brook." Paul's prophecy came true in 1953 after the Open Championship was played in Meadowbrook. The next year, the Open moved to Oak Brook, where it would be played until 1979, the longest consecutive time the Open has been played at one location. By 1956, Oak Brook Polo Club had 13 polo fields and stabling for 400 horses, with games played 6 days a week. The club also included grandstands, bleachers, and box seats, a clubhouse, and 36 miles of tree-lined trails. Paul joined 4 polo fields so they could be used as east-west and north-south airstrips for family and incoming guests. Those guests included royalty, dignitaries, and celebrities from His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, to Hollywood's Audrey Hepburn and Vivian Leigh, and countless others visited the club. Paul also initiated and hosted a long list of international polo matches that drew legendary players from around the world. The Oak Brook team also traveled far and wide to support other clubs, and Oak Brook hosted international teams representing nearly 30 countries. Polo provided the village of Oak Brook a lifestyle appeal, a social sporting scene amplified and carried on by his son Michael and daughter Jory. It helped lay claim that polo created Oak Brook. The Oak Brook Polo Club was the largest polo plant in the world from 1954 to 1979 and would be billed the polo capital of the United States, or Polo Town. In 2022, the Oak Brook Polo Club will be celebrating its 100th anniversary, but returning to its original and masterpiece field, the Cecil Smith Field. To honor this historical occasion, the Oak Brook Polo Club has invited club friends and family to share stories of their fondest memories of visiting and playing at Oak Brook. Join us as we take listeners down memory lane with some of the sport's household names while they share their experiences at Oak Brook and the impact the club and its founders have played on their lives. Saddle up. Welcome to this Outside the Board special podcast edition with me, Danny O'Leary. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our 5th episode of this special edition podcast of Outside the Boards, celebrating Oak Brook Polo Club's 100th anniversary. Before I introduce my next guest, did you know that Oak Brook Polo Club hosted teams representing close to 30 countries from nearby Canada all the way to New Zealand? Some of those countries became hallmark events and friendly matchups for decades, including England, Ireland, Mexico, Jamaica, and India. The Oak Brook Polo team traveled the world representing the United States and as an ambassador to the sport. It was Michael Butler who in 1971 helped revive international polo competition in Britain, the first international match between the two countries in more than 30 years at the famous Cowdray Park Polo Club. My guest on today's podcast is Bob Putz, who you all might know as the United States Polo Association's former CEO and general manager of the Santa Barbara and San Diego Polo Clubs. Bobby is originally from Chicago's western suburbs. Oak Brook was responsible for opening almost all the doors for Bobby, having played at Oak Brook for well over a decade, beginning in the late 70s to the early 90s, before taking his career out west. Bobby began playing in his teens after begging Steve Kuhn. Bobby would fall in love with the game immediately and later become a pro for Tom Wigdall, along with his sons John and David, which began his career at Oak Brook. Bobby is a very close friend to the Oak Brook Polo Club, Michael Butler and the Butler family, and I feel honored to have worked alongside him and to call him my friend. We are thrilled to have him on this special podcast. Enjoy. Bobby Putz, long time no talk. How you doing, brother?
I'm good, Danny. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. You have enjoying the holidays?
Yes, looking forward to them. So far, so good. And I'm out in the mountains in Southern California, and the weather's been phenomenal. A little too non-winter. Be nice to have a snow here come Christmas, but it's hit and miss around here.
Oh, hopefully we do have snow. My gosh, there's just on the news this morning, like, oh, we expected at least 2 inches of snow up here in Chicago. Yeah, that's not happening.
Yeah, well, we get snow and then we'll be 70 degrees 2 days later, so we appreciate the little bit of snow we get. You got to get out there and play when you can.
Yeah. Now, are you going to be heading up here to Chicago anytime soon?
I don't have plans to come anytime soon, although I know that next year is the 100th anniversary of the Oak Brook Polo Club, and I certainly would like to get there at some point next summer and visit and see everybody. And I know I've spoken to Michael Butler. He and I are quite close, and he definitely wants to go. And I'm hoping he's physically able to do it. And if he is, and he goes, I'll definitely go and meet with him and hang with him and reminisce with him.
I have no doubt the Friends of Conservation is hosting their event September 26th, 25th. So the last match of the 2022 season. So I can imagine.
I'm sure Jory and Roydy, yeah.
Adam, all of them are planning on coming back up. Absolutely.
Great. Yeah. It'll be a fun reunion, and hopefully we can get a lot of the alumni players back.
It will be. I mean, so far I've been talking to the other people that have been part of this podcast, Mike Daly, Joe Baker, Richard Khalil. I think they're all going to probably plan on making their way out here as well. But hey, so for those in the audience, who the heck is Bobby Putz and what is your affiliation with polo? Obviously, you're connected to Oakbrook.
Definitely, Oakbrook was what opened almost all the doors for me for my career in polo. So I have such a soft spot in my heart for Oakbrook, and I've loved every minute that I played there. And I think I played there for over a decade. I started in the late 70s and I played into the early 90s, right up until there were a lot of changes when Michael and the Butler family were out. And that's kind of the time when I had been playing a lot of polo in California, had opportunities to stay in California. And with the Butlers not being involved in the club, it seemed to be the appropriate time to move on and continue my career in California.
So you got your start then at Oakbrook. At what age were you?
I think I played my first games at Oakbrook when I was around 18 years old.
Mm-hmm.
My first pro, if you could call it that, job was at Oakbrook, and it was with Tom, we call him Papa Tom Wigdahl, who was a big sponsor, and his two sons, John and David, were very good players. And I was playing in the Chicago Avenue Armory in Illinois, in Chicago back at that time. We played polo pretty much year round. In the summertime, you played on the grass, and in the wintertime, you played arena. And we went from playing arena polo at Fairlane Farms, and Fairlane Farms was really the roots of my getting me into polo and mentoring me. The Kuhn family, Walt Kuhn and John and Dick, great people, and their brother Steve, who's no longer with us, but they all helped me a lot. And we used to play arena polo in a little barn, 2-on-2, and then a little bigger outdoor arena, 3-on-3. And when I first wanted to play polo, I think I was about 13 years old. And we lived right down the street from Fairlane Farms. And I'd go over and I'd watch them play. I'm like, this is really cool, because I love to play hockey and I loved horses. I'm like, I want to do this, and they're like, this is not a kid's game. This is a men's game. There are no kids. You can't play with us. So I'd go over there and they'd pay me 50 cents a chucker to hot walk the horses, because back in those days, well, you played a horse a full chucker in the arena, especially. And then when the horses were done, they didn't tie them up. Today we tend to just tie them up and strip them and wash them. But back in those days, they walked them. And a lot of times these horses would play again. So they played one chukker and they were going to rest for a chukker or cool off and then come back. So the hot walker would walk them the whole next chukker that another horse was playing, and then come back, and that player would get back on the cooled down horse. And I got $2 a game, 50 cents a chukker. There were 4 chukker games. And that was my job in polo. And I'd watch and I'd be like, I want to play. Finally, one day, I just bugging Steve Kuhn so bad. One day he said, all right, just come over and bring your boots and I'm going to give you a lesson. And that was it. My veins were injected to no end for polo. I just couldn't do anything but think about it, breathe it, live it. It's all I wanted to do. It changed everything in my life at that point. I never fell so in love with anything or was so passionate about anything as I was for polo. So when I was finally able to go to the armory, the only way I could go to the armory was find somebody to help pay for it. I mean, my parents were very supportive and they paid for a lot, but polo's expensive. And I was one of 4 kids, and it's like it cost a couple $1,000 to go to play in the armory.
Yes.
Well, what other sport in the 70s were the parents paying a couple $1,000 to have their kids play, plus buy them horses and all that stuff. So I found Dr. Joe Cecil, who also was a player at Oak Brook, and his 2 sons, Joe and Dominic, both played. Dominic became a very good player. Anyway, Joe paid me. I had a 4-horse trailer. I'd take my 2 horses from Naperville, pick his 2 horses up at a barn, at the Healy barn in Oak Brook, and then drive all the way downtown Chicago, unload them in the middle of the street on Chicago Avenue, right off Lakeshore Drive, and have to take the trailer to Navy Pier, to park the trailer at Navy Pier, walk back through the snowstorm, and then tack up the horses and groom for him and hot walk for him. And then at the end of the night, it'd be around 10 o'clock at night, they'd have chuckers for leftovers. And I'd get to play in the leftover chuckers. And after I was done, cool the horses, pull the trailer back up in the middle of the street with blowing snow and wind, right on the lake, load them up, and then drive back to Oak Brook, unload Joe's, drive back to Naperville, unload mine, go to bed, and then get up for school the next morning. So, you have to love it to be willing to do those kind of things for polo. But I became a pretty good arena polo player as a result of being young and playing with a lot of great players. Even in the armory, even though it started out in the scrimmages, they started inviting me to play in better games because I was kind of handy,
Mm-hmm.
So as I got better, Tom Wigdahl said to me one day, he goes, what are you doing? How come you're improving so much? And I said, well, I'm riding constantly. I'm sticking balling as much as I can. I'm working with my horses. I'm practicing and all that. And he goes, well, I want you to come play with me. And I said, sure, where? And he said, at Oak Brook. And I said, that would be fantastic. But I said, I can't afford to do that. He goes, oh, no, I'm not asking you to pay for anything. And I said, but in order to do that, I have to have a groom, and I can't afford to have a groom. And he goes, I'll take care of your groom. He paid for me to have a groom, and he put me on his team, and I played it my first year at Oak Brook. I think it was the late 70s, 77 or 8 or somewhere in there. And then I kept playing after that. I played with Tom a lot. And then, we mixed things up. I played with Tom. I played with John Green and Dick and John Kuhn one year, and that was just a blast because we were all the Naperville gang. We were all on Hobson Road. We all knew each other from long before we all played at Oak Brook, and we were kids. I was a kid. They're a little older than me, but we were young. And we did that. That was a fantastic team. And then I remember one year I played with Tom Hughes. I don't know if people have been talking about Tom Hughes.
No, you're the first person to bring him up.
I can't believe I'm the first one to bring up Hughesy. Anyway, there's a lot of stories about Tom Hughes. He was quite the character, but a lot of people said he was connected, and in the mafia, this and that. He intimidated me to no end. I was scared to death of the guy, but he was really good to me too. I had no reason to be scared other than all the rumors, about this guy could kill you if you don't do what he says or cross him or something like that. So I got on a team with Hughes. I can't remember who our teammates were, but Tom was probably about 4 or 5 goals, and I was maybe 2 or 3 goals at that time. And I was still probably a late teenager. And we were playing, and Tom had used his mouth a lot, I guess would be the proper way to say it, in the game, right? He intimidated the other players on the other team with just tormenting them with his mouth and that. And he and John Kuhn hated, I don't know if I should say they hated each other, but they were rivals to no end, right? Every time we played, there was a battle between those guys. And I was like, John, this guy's going to kill you. Don't push it so far. And John, if you knew John Kuhn, John was not a guy to back down. He was a stand-up guy. He's a stand-up guy. He would play the game straight and fair. But if you tried to pull something on him, you would pay. Anyway, John and Hughes were at it, and then the umpires would blow the whistle and Hughes would tear into the umpires, It was him. You can't call a foul. And of course, I can't repeat actual words he say. And so we're playing, and I had never said anything to an umpire at that point. I can't say that later in my career, but at that point, so they blew a foul on me, and I screamed at the umpire, I was right, it was him, whatever. And Tom Hughes comes flying. Now I'm on his team, right? He comes flying up to me, he grabs me by the jersey, by the neck, almost pulled me off my horse, but I managed to stay on. And he said, "You little so-and-so, don't you ever talk back to the umpires. You do as I say, not as I do." And he just farmed my head. And I was like, I don't think I ever said another word to an umpire for a couple of years after that. He scared me so bad. But I thought he was going to kill me, but that was Hughes. He was like, he was a good mentor. He really did mean it too. He's like, "I'm going to teach you the right way, and I don't do it the right way. So you better learn the right way, and don't you ever act like me." That was the last time I ever even looked at an umpire when I was playing. Scott was a great young guy, young player. I think he was playing at 4 goals at that time, played back. So we played a few seasons with those guys. They were from Michigan. Scott went on, Wes has passed on, but Scott went on to play a lot of high goal polo, played the Opens in Florida and that. And Reese played up until about 5-6 years ago. So he had quite a ongoing career in polo. And then from there, I kind of went on to playing with the Butlers. I had played with Jeffrey Kent, who was Jory Butler's former husband. And he was with Antonio Herrera and I think Brett Kiley back then. And I believe it was Owen Reinhardt, actually. And I think Owen was only like 4 goals at the time, later got to 10. So, he was on his way up, definitely. Played with those guys 1 season, but I don't know why we didn't seem to click that well. And so I didn't get the job back on that team. But I did end up playing at least 3 seasons with Michael and Adam. And we had a blast. Michael, he always made it fun for everybody. He always had a party on Saturday night before the game on Sunday. And the Oakbrook team did seem to get more of the Sunday games. So there was that kind of benefit, that perk when you played with the Oakbrook team. You probably got the Sunday game more frequently than the other teams did.
Yeah.
And then Michael would have these dinners. And at that time, Michael was living in what was formerly his father's house, Paul Butler's house. And they had the family field there. And that was not on the proper Oakbrook property, but across 31st Street on the south side of 31st Street. And James Rice, and I should have mentioned James earlier because James was a part of Oakbrook for me from the very, very beginning. Even when I first was playing there, Cecil Smith was still doing some umpiring and schooling horses for the Butlers and that. Of course, I hope everybody knows who Cecil was, but Cecil was one of the best American players to ever play the game. I think he held a 10-goal handicap for 25 consecutive years, right? And then they dropped him and then to 9 or something. Then they had to raise him again next year.
It seems like an impossible record to beat that many years at that level of a handicap.
Yeah. And when you look at today's world, and yes, an Adolfo Cambiaso will do that and has done it. But I guess that's how you get a unique player every now and then, like a Michael Jordan that has that perseverance and keeps playing and playing at that level well beyond everybody else. But it was cool that Cecil gave me some pointers in that when I was young. And I was so in awe of him because of being the greatest player, But I was never able to see him play at his peak. But he was around, and James Rice was working for the Butler family. And James was one of the most knowledgeable horsemen I've ever known in my life. If he saw a horse one time, he knew that horse forever. It was incredible. I mean, I don't know how you do that with people, and he could do it with horses. He advised me on a lot of purchases and non-purchases of horses. Don't buy that horse. It's this and that, and this is the one you should buy, and that kind of thing. And I stayed friends with James through the rest of his entire life. He ended up out in California, and we stayed close till he passed. But on Saturday nights, we'd have to go to it was kind of like an obligation. Not that we didn't want to go, but it was almost every Saturday night all summer long. You go to Michael's for dinner. But James and Jackie Murphy and Adam, who all lived at the house, at the Butler house, would all go out to like Burger King or McDonald's or something before dinner because Michael was a vegetarian. And back in the 80s, that many people were vegan, vegetarian, and you didn't have the options for veggie substitutes that you have in today's world, right?
Yeah.
James always called it bird feed, so we're going to Michael's for the bird feed, so you better stop and eat before you go to Michael's. And they did. They literally did go get Whoppers and quarter pounders and all that kind of stuff before they went to dinner at Michael's, so they weren't famished because they couldn't eat the bird food. But that was James. And, James especially, he liked his barbecue ribs, his burgers and all that. But a wonderful guy. James was a cool guy. I don't know if you ever met him, Danny, but he's...
No. We did a great article this past season about James Rice in our Score magazine. He's been inducted into the Polo's Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and well-deserved. I mean, this guy worked his entire life in polo, and not as a player as much as a trainer and a coach and all that. And back then, he coached a lot in a non-coaching capacity, I guess, non-official coaching capacity, but he knew the game so well, and he was a very smart strategist for the game. He didn't say a lot, but whatever he said made total sense, and it was always spot on. So I loved having James around. And that was one of the things was nice about playing with Michael and Adam is you got James. He was part of the team.
I always heard rumors about James and his ability to recall horses that had played in a tournament or that were his so easily.
Incredible how he could know a horse. I mean, he knew everybody's horses. He knew every horse that everyone was playing. I never met anybody like him. There's a lot of guys who are great at an eye for a horse, but I've never seen anybody as sharp as James. I mean, he could remember it. I just don't know how he could do it.
Yeah, like he knew like the horse that played in a tournament at a certain chukker or something like that.
He'd see a horse and say, Joe Barry played that horse 8 years ago in chukker number 3 of this game of the Gold Cup or something, and you'd be like, how could you know that's the same horse, And it would be the horse, but he was just that way. Incredible to be around. And then toward the end of my last couple of years at Oak Brook, I played with Angelo Claronimus. And I think our team was the last couple of years was with Cali Garcia and Julio Ariano. And funny, I had a higher handicap than Julio at the time. And I think I was 5 and he was 4. And then he ended up playing at 9 goals for many years, one of our great American players. And he was just a kid, he was a teenager when he played with us. And then I was in my later 20s. And we had a fun team. And Cali was quite the character. He was constantly disappearing. And everybody knew Cali could do this. I don't know where he went and how he went and all that. But I remember a couple occasions on a Saturday, Angelo and Julio and I are meeting. And Cali's not there. And we're not sure he's going to be there for Sunday's game. Nobody knew where he was. He would answer the phone. And sure enough, 15, 20 minutes before the game, Cali'd show up. And of course, he'd play fantastic. He's a brilliant player.
Yeah.
But he was quite the character. He was always cutting deals and making deals. And
I always found it amazing the number of people, their future Hall of Famers are currently in the Hall of Fame for polo that had gotten their start or played some considerable time in Oakbrook. I feel if Oakbrook had its own wall of Hall of Fames, I feel like over 50% of those who are already inducted would be on that wall.
Well, when you think of how far back, going to be 100 years, right? So when we played in the 80s, we had so many families played. It was the Kuhn family, the Wigdahl family, the Eline family, the Orthwine family, the Crammels, the Siebers, the Stodders, the Healys, the Yackleys, my brother and I, the Butler whole family played. It was more the families, Angelo and his son, Wes Devon and his son. There were just so many brothers and fathers and sons and aunts and uncles. And there weren't as many women playing back then as there are today, unfortunately, outside of having some women's tournaments. There were women playing, but they play a lot of women's polo, not so much mixed, which is too bad because I think there were a lot of very talented young female players that at that time they weren't getting the opportunities. But
Women's Polo Club was created at some point. Wasn't that one started by John Green?
The Naperville.
Yeah.
And they had like 30 women playing. My wife, Marcy, played in it. And Cheryl Walt Kuhn's wife, John and Dick's mom, everybody played. John Green's wife, all the players' wives wanted to play, and they had a great club up there in Naperville. And it's a shame it didn't continue. It really got super strong, and then it kind of fizzled off, and it just shouldn't have fizzled off. The daughters should have gotten the opportunities, and it should have kept going, more so like things happen today. But, I guess it all comes down to economics. And plus, did those girls really want to play bad enough to make the commitment you had to make, to do it?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't easy, especially back then. We did it all on our own. The whole time I was playing at Oakbrook, I built my polo farm in Plainfield, which is just south of Naperville. And I ended up with 2 polo fields and a stick and ball field at my farm. And that the Kuhns and John Green and Ari Hugendorn and Bill Reed bought property down the street from us, and they built the Naperville Polo Club out there. And then the Adrians, and I failed to mention those guys, the Adrian family, they all played, 3 brothers. They built their farm another couple miles down the street. And then John Green built his own private place, not the one he's at right now, but before Aaron Moore, he had a different property, and he had a field here. So in our area there, probably within about 4 square miles, we must have had a dozen polo fields.
That's incredible.
So it was, and see, we needed that because Oakbrook, truthfully, they only had like 3 fields,
Mm-hmm.
And when they gave up on the Pan Am field, which was, you probably know the year better than me, Danny, because I've been doing all the research.
You've been playing on it.
Yeah, and we've been playing on it, but it got flooded so bad, and they lost everything, and that was it. Michael moved everything up to field 2 and set up the tents and the Sunday setup and everything on field 2. So we had field 2, and then we had the practice fields, which were like 3 and 4, a little bit L-shaped. That's where they play all the soccer now. So we could only play, had to be careful not to destroy the fields, right? So we couldn't play all the tournament games at Oakbrook anymore. So for me, it was phenomenal for me because the whole time I played, all the way till the mid 80s, I was getting paid to play as a pro, playing year round. I was also working full time in our family business in downtown Chicago in our meat business. Plus I built our farm. So I was burning the candle at every end you could, and by the time I got to my mid 20s, maybe 25, 26, I was like, something's got to give. Our work started early in the morning. We started at 4 a.m. Monday through Thursday and 2 a.m. on Friday. And I'd be downtown Chicago working all day and then come home, get my horses and go to polo.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time I'd play, I was too exhausted to even play, and then way too exhausted after I played, and then taking care of the farm and the horses and everything. So finally I told my dad I can't do it anymore. And the choice wasn't to quit polo. The choice, of course, was to quit the business because I couldn't quit polo. My love and passion. But I was able to make enough money as a pro and then renting my fields that I really could manage it without that other job. So that was pretty cool for me because I would actually get paid to play on my own fields, and I was getting paid rent for those fields at the same time. So it was kind of like double dipping. It's kind of like a dream come true. I'm like, first of all, just the fact that I was getting paid to do something I would pay anything to do because I loved it so much, and then getting paid to have the fields, which was such a expense, and it was great to finally be able to get that. That worked out great until Michael left Oakbrook, and then it kind of went downhill. They weren't renting any outside fields anymore, and they're kind of trying to regroup and keep Oakbrook going. I had been working at the Empire Polo Club. Well, I was playing professionally at the Empire Polo Club for the owner, Al Hagan, and I started managing the club as well. I think it was 1992. This was when Michael was out, and Angelo wasn't going to put the team back in because the polo wasn't organized and no one knew what the future was. As I was playing desert polo, in Indio and running the Empire Polo Club in the winter, but then in the summertime I was coming back to Oakbrook. So I ended up going to San Diego and playing in San Diego and not coming back to Oakbrook anymore. And that was 1991, then would have been the last year that I played Oakbrook.
The Oak Brook Polo Club is thrilled to announce the creation of the Friends of Oak Brook Polo. the club's not-for-profit arm created with the mission of supporting quality recreational and competitive polo in Oakbrook through the rejuvenation and sustainability of polo activities. This will ensure the long-term health of the polo club so that it continues to thrive and host safe and competitive polo for future generations. The goal of the organization will be to raise and invest funds for maintaining and improving Oak Brook Polo Club's fields so that it remains a healthy, safe, and competitive venue for the sport of polo and for the development of recreational polo programs to help advance the sport in the area. To learn more or to donate, please visit www.oakbrookpoloclub.com for more information or contact us directly at info@oakbrookpoloclub.com. Thank you in advance for your support in helping to preserve the club's history and importance in the global polo community.
Is there a particular tournament that you are involved with in Oakbrook that pretty much stands out? Either that you observed as a young teenager or had played in yourself?
I think one for sure from an observation standpoint that always sticks out in my memory is the U.S. Open when it was played there at the end. Was it 1978?
78, 79, yeah.
And I remember watching guys like Joe Barry and Roy Barry and Tommy Wayman and Memo Gracita and Corky Linfoot. I think the Ratama team won it, and it would, I believe, was Steve Gose, Joe Barry, Memo, and Corky Linfoot. And I think Memo at the time was only 4 goals, right? And so Memo's another legend 10-goal player that was around Oakbrook too, like you said. So many of them were. But I could never forget Joe and Roy, how they could hit that ball. Unbelievable. Back shots that would go 140 yards, in the air. Roy had a gray mare called Delta Dawn. Joe had the bigger gray and Roy had the smaller gray. I can't remember what the other one's name was. And these horses were just machines, And I also remember that today's polo, you watch high go polo today, you see guys changing horses every 2-3 minutes, right? Those guys didn't get off these horses. And they came and played them back 2 and 3 chukkers. It was amazing the stamina those horses had. It was such a different style game. I remember sitting in those stands and watching these guys hit, and they just made it look like artistry. The way they make contact with the ball and just perfect shots, boom, right into the guy's pocket,
Yeah.
And that was kind of the first time I really got to see 9 and 10-goal players play in person. And then, of course, later I ended up getting to play with those guys. So that was also awesome. But my first memories is like, God, this is just amazing. And I'd never seen anything like it in polo. We won a lot of tournaments, and I got to go to England a couple of times with Michael and Adam and play against Prince Charles and the events and the dinners. And it was pretty cool. I was meeting them and Princess Diana and everything. It's just not something you get to do every day. So it was very unique and cool opportunity. Something I just never would have thought I would ever do.
Yeah.
Then if it wasn't for polo, I wouldn't have. But this one season, I was playing the 8-goal, and we had, I think it was 8 and 16 at that time, or 8 and 18. And Michael and I really pushed to get this 8-goal going at Oakbrook because we had all these younger players. I was getting into my mid-20s at the time, right? So I was not the kid anymore. But we had younger players, my brother and some friends of mine, Jackie Murphy and Adam and Robbie Yackley and Todd Rockley. And there just seemed to be a lot of these young guys that you couldn't get them a spot on these other teams, right? But we wanted to keep them playing. They're great players and they needed experience, So we decided to do an 8-goal, but we made it a 4-chukker 8-goal because we had to have pros from the other league play with the younger guys to get the handicap to play 8-goal. And horse-wise, it was too much to play 6 chukkers, and the younger guys didn't have the horses either. So we started that league, and I got to play with my brother for several seasons, and that was pretty special because he quit playing before I left Oakbrook, and we never played since. It was really fun to get to do that. And Steve Yackley and Robbie were playing together, and Jackie and Adam were playing together. And there are a lot of young guys coming in mixed up with, George Alexander, and those guys would come bring teams and that. Then one of the last 2 seasons that I was playing there, I was playing the 8-goal with Roy Butler. I was playing the other league with Michael. or Angelo. So Roydie and I matched up with Todd Rockley and his father, Buzz. And Buzz was a great arena player. I used to help him at the arena when I was back as a kid, when I was telling you about that. He was a great number 4. Played the back really well. Played it well outdoors too, but played it really, really well indoors. So Todd was a young guy, but he was a scrapper, and I knew I could help him a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew Buzz was a great back, so I could take chances and go up in the game, and Buzz would always cover the back door. And Roydie was very good at going forward. So if you could get Roydie out front with the ball, she was very good at carrying the ball and scoring goals. So we ended up playing an undefeated season. And I don't think I've ever had another undefeated season. It's pretty hard to go undefeated. And we played the entire summer with that team and never lost a game. So I had great memories of that.
So it was you, Roydie, Todd, and who was the fourth?
His father, Buzz.
Buzz. Okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Roydie got injured. She had gone down in a play and she hit her head and pretty hard, and it was just one of those bad timing things. And she really was not wanting to play that competitively after that, which I don't blame her. Plus, I think Todd's handicap went up, so we probably wouldn't have been able to play anyway. But that was one of those special teams, and I had another team with my father-in-law, who wasn't my father-in-law at the time, Pat Manning. And Pat used to sponsor and play at Oak Brook too. But after he wasn't playing the high level, he played with us in the 8 goal. So I played with my brother, my future father-in-law, like Billy Mudra, who was just a kid, maybe a 0 or a minus at the time. We were just teaching him to play. We played the 8 goal, and we actually won about everything we played in, and with that team too. So that was a lot of fun, So I really enjoyed having that other league. The high goal was always the best, but I have a lot of fond memories of just getting to play with your friends and getting to choose the teams. Where in more in the high goal, I got invited on a team.
Mm-hmm. Is there a story that pops out in your mind from outside the boards at all, other than Michael's Saturday evening parties?
Michael's Saturday evenings. We used to play international, and that was one of the cool things that Michael did. And when I was playing on Michael's team, I always was involved with the international matches because I was on his team and we always hosted them. And the way we did things back then is we had 2 home teams and then the 1 international team. So this one weekend it was Jamaica. And actually I ended up going and playing professionally in Jamaica for a couple of seasons for Danny Melville, who owned the club in Ocho Rios called Chukka Cove.
Mm-hmm.
Danny had 3 boys that played, and 2 of them, Alexander and Mark, and I think Mark just came and played, didn't he, in the international?
No, he couldn't make it.
Okay. He was going to come. Yeah. Those guys came and spent 2 summers at my farm, and I mentored and coached them in that.
Mm-hmm.
So we became very close. Anyway, they were in town. And the Jamaicans always made it fun because the Jamaicans would party. And it was really hard to play polo because they wanted to party all night. And then we were supposed to get up and play. And I did not do well with the partying and then playing the next day. So Michael had this big party at the Drake Hotel. So we're out at the Drake Hotel, and Steve Lang, one of the Jamaican players, he partied a little beyond what he should party, right? So we were getting ready to leave. And so we're at the entrance to the Drake, and it was a valet. So they're bringing our cars up and everything. And this guy drives up in this Jaguar that must have been a $150,000, $200,000 car at that time, The valet pulls the car up, and Steve Lang walks up to the car, gets in the car. The guy thinks he owns the car, right? And he drives off. He couldn't even see straight. And he drove off with his car. And we all just looked at each other like, did you all just see what happened? So a bunch of us went running after the car. And we caught him like a block away and pulled him out of the car. And we got the valet guy to come back and get the car and drive it back up there. We're like, if he would have pulled out onto, what is it, York Road there? I hate to venture to think what would have happened, but
I'm curious to know whose car that is.
yeah, me too. We didn't go back, needless to say, and we got out of there. Yeah, we got him out of there. Yeah, but yeah, there were some wild parties with the Jamaicans in Jamaica and in Oak Brook.
Mm-hmm. We love them a lot. The Melville family, the Waits family, all of them are just fantastic people down there. So big shout out to the Jamaican crew. I know they're pretty excited to make it to the finals of the International Cup.
Yeah, I got to be best friends with Mark Waits because, they all came. Mark was the young up and coming Jamaican player, at that time.
Mm-hmm.
He was the best of the group, the Melvilles and all of them. So they came to play and we were mounting them. So I said I'd mount Mark because I liked the way he rode, and I really didn't like just putting anybody on my horses. I was pretty particular about who I would let ride my horses. And I had seen Mark play. So I was like, no, let me mount him, And so Mark came out to my farm, and I think I had about 14 horses that we could choose from to use. And so I said, we'll just tack them up and I'll ride one, you ride one for a few minutes, and then we'll switch, and then we'll take those two back and we'll go through them all. And then when we're done, just tell me which ones you want to play. So we did that. And Mark was like a one goal up and coming kid. And he's like, I can't believe you're going to let me pick out of all the horses, which ones I want to play. And I'm like, well, I trust you, one, and two, when I go to Jamaica, I want to be mounted. So if I put you on the bottom of the barrel, then when I go to Jamaica, I'm going to get the bottom of the barrel.
Mm-hmm.
And so we became best friends. Following that, he was the best man at my wedding, and we've been best friends ever since,
Yeah.
So it's great how those relationships, how do you meet somebody from Jamaica and become lifelong friends? The polo is what does it, creates those opportunities. And the Melvilles and I are still best friends. I love those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And we stay in touch, just not as much as Mark, because Mark is in the States half the year or more.
Yeah.
Because he manages the Denver Polo Club. And of course, his son, Jason, is a great player. And you've had him quite a bit, right, at Oakbrook as a regular.
Yeah. Played for Jim Jury on the Oak Brook Polo team, and he came up to play on Jamaica, which is really exciting to see him back. I know Jim Jury was thrilled, and seeing Christina and their little baby.
And the baby now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He played with Santi, right?
Mm-hmm.
Torres? Yeah. So that was nice. Because Santi, Miguel, his father, and I played with Michael and Adam.
Okay.
Yeah, that was one of our teams. And Miguel and I were good friends. And I remember going to their wedding. I remember when Santi was born. And watching him become such a phenomenal player was fun. And now he's going to be married in April to Ali Azaro, Mike Azaro's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's also kind of cool about the polo world is a lot of the couples are polo family.
Yeah.
Polo family, My wife and I, her father played, and so she played. And I think it makes best sense if you do find somebody that loves the game as much as you do, because if they don't, it's kind of hard because you have to devote so much time to the game. If your partner isn't into it, it's pretty tough.
Mm-hmm. Oakbrook obviously is not what it used to be in the 70s and what have you. Do you feel as though Oakbrook still plays an important role today in the global polo community?
Absolutely. My fear was that it was true for a couple of years. There was no polo in Oakbrook. I don't remember what years that was, but right before Jim really kind of resurrected it, they didn't play there a couple summers.
Yeah, I mean, there was the recession, but I will tell you, when you go back, there were signed agreements with the village of polo organizers immediately following the height of the recession. And the reason why polo wasn't held was because of the field. That field flooded, and no one wanted to put their horses in danger on a field that couldn't drain itself. It was a financial and unsafe thing to do. Now they put drainage, not drainage that you would put in a sports field today or a polo field, but it was something to mend the flooding issue, but we were still plagued with it. There's no question about it. It affected seasons, canceled matches, all that kind of thing. But yeah, people didn't see polo, but I will tell you there were organizers in place, including Jim Zenny, contract out of his place in Florida. And they think of this as in 2010.
Okay.
He implanted a plane. And I always tell people, I'm like, if he had a shot at polo in Oak Brook, and then me and Jim probably wouldn't be here.
No, that's true, because I'm sure he would have done it right.
Yeah.
Knowing Jim.
If he had his field and played and he was able to, continue Oak Brook, there's no question about it. He'd be still around today.
Yeah. Oak Brook was the hub for all of these Midwest players, from the Orthwines coming up from St. Louis and the Elines and all of the other pros with the Oxleys and all that, and their pros. And that came from Milwaukee, and the Siebers from Ohio, and Stoddard from Indiana, and West Devon and his group from Michigan. And guys would come from Rockford, and you come to Oak Brook, right? That's where everybody wanted to be. It was that Sunday field concept, and that's where you got to meet people. And as a player, you got seen, you got recognized. And really, what does any sports person, athlete want? They want to do well. They want recognition. They want to be a good competitor, but they want recognition, right? And you can't get recognition when you're playing on the farm fields and no one's there watching you, right? So when you go to Oak Brook, we'd have better games at my farm sometimes than we'd have at Oak Brook. But it didn't matter, because there was only the family and grooms and that around that saw it, right? But you play on Sunday in front of this big crowd and everything, and all of a sudden people want your autograph and you're a celebrity. And I mean, that's what inspires and drives athletes, right? To do more and do better. So without it, when it went away, it didn't mean polo totally went away, but that whole ability to showcase it went away. So by what you and Jim have done is you've reinstated that. And now you've got these outside clubs, they're not the same properties in that, but it's the same concept. They're up in Barrington, and they're out in Plainfield and Naperville and that, and they're all great support systems and fields in that. If the field is good, if the footing on the field is safe and the turf is good and the ball, you can play well, where else would you want to play on Sunday? But without those, like you mentioned, when the field's not safe, no one's going to play. No one's going to risk hurting themselves and their horses just to play in front of a crowd of people. Or if they do, they're not going to play for real. They're just going to canter around. So, by getting that footing right and getting that good turf on the fields and all that, it's crucial. And when you have that, everybody's going to want to play there. I'd want to come back and play there. I mean, it's just kind of a magical place to play, as a player.
I use the analogy when I was selling Field 2 to a number of people that the Cecil Smith Field was our Augusta in a way. The level of history, and it's kind of our amen corner to some degree. That's how I always kind of sold it to people. I'm like, there's so much history here. Surprising that the Hall of Fame is not still headquartered, or should be headquartered up here.
Well, I'll tell you, there's some truth to that. And the history of Oak Brook supersedes the history of most any other club in this country. And the fact that it's still going, there is still an element to Oak Brook. And even that the Butler family, even though they don't own it anymore, and that are still behind it and supportive of it. And the next generation, even Michael and Jory, who are up there in years, they still have the passion for seeing it continue on indefinite. And Roy and Adam, supported, and that's the next generation behind in that. Maybe Adam's son will someday. Who knows, right? But it's a legacy for them, but it's more of a legacy for the sport of polo, the game. Because you've got 100-year history there. Like you said, read off a list of players that played from the 20s through the 80s. It's an incredible list that played at Oak Brook.
When I speak to people in mainstream sports all the time and kind of walk them through the history that Chicagoland has with the sport, they're pretty amazed. They never knew it existed. But there's that substantial history. I'm like, you walk down the Hall of Famers and the Open, and how old the club is comparable to other sports organizations in Chicago, and number of championships, the Oak Brook Polo team, we're right up there with them. We definitely are. So
Yeah.
I talked to the Chicagoland Sports Hall of Fame people, and you look obviously at their Rolodex of Hall of Famers. There's not one person, obviously in polo, that's not in there. I'm like, this kind of needs to change a little bit. You have
Yeah.
some very, very powerful individuals who played up here in the sport that should be listed on there.
Right.
That's for sure.
It's an incredible list of people. And the more I think back, Bill Ilvasacker and Heb Hughes and Dick Bunn and these guys that have gone for a while, so you kind of out of sight, out of mind, but they were very influential. Bill Ilvasacker goes on to Florida to build the Palm Beach Polo and Country Club.
Yep.
Incredible part of our history. And it all kind of was Oakbrook that got them going.
Yeah.
So
it's the catalyst to a lot of things. That's for sure.
It really is. It really is. And the more you dig around, the more you find it had influence over so many people and where, what direction they went in their careers and that. And, I would never have played polo, I'm sure, if there wasn't for an Oakbrook, because if it wasn't for Oakbrook, there wouldn't have been a Fairlane Farms, and Walt Kuhn wouldn't have had his neighborhood club that got me into polo. And so who knows, and I went on to play for my entire life and then run the United States Polo Association. So it's
the butterfly effects.
Yeah. Oakbrook, that's why I said it has a place in my heart, because I would never have had the life I've had without it. I always get great feelings when I go back there. It was such great memories. So much fun.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing you this next year. We definitely have to have you and Marcy back here. No question about it.
Yeah.
Now that you're not with the USPA anymore, maybe you can attend those late night Saturday parties.
Right. You're not going to make me play the next day, right?
Yeah, exactly. But hey, Bobby, I incredibly appreciate you coming on and reminiscing and going back and telling some stories and how important Oakbrook means to you and your life. It truly is great. I hope it meant a lot going down memory lane for you.
Very, very fun to go down memory lane, and always enjoy speaking with you, Danny. We had the pleasure of working together a bit at the United States Polo Association where we met. And I think that relationship also has been productive and fun for both of us, even after the USPA.
Oh, absolutely.
Just to throw it out there, if I am there and you need help announcing any of the matches, I can do that. Be happy to do that.
I'm going to hold you to that now. Now you threw it out there.
I did throw it out there, so just not that I want to knock anybody out of their spot.
You're there for the color commentary.
There you go.
Maybe not the play-by-play, but the color commentary.
Whatever you need, I'll be happy to do it.
Well, Bobby, thanks again. You have a wonderful holiday.
Thanks, Dan, you too, and to your family as well.
We'll talk soon, brother.
Take care.
The Oak Brook Polo Club is thrilled to announce the creation of the Friends of Oak Brook Polo. The club's not-for-profit arm created with the mission of supporting quality recreational and competitive polo in Oak Brook through the rejuvenation and sustainability of polo activities. This will ensure the long-term health of the polo club so that it continues to thrive and host safe and competitive polo for future generations. The goal of the organization will be to raise and invest funds for maintaining and improving Oak Brook Polo Club's fields so that it remains a healthy, safe, and competitive venue for the sport of polo and for the development of recreational polo programs to help advance the sport in the area. To learn more or to donate, please visit www.oakbrookpoloclub.com for more information or contact us directly at info@oakbrookpoloclub.com. Thank you in advance for your support in helping to preserve the club's history and importance in the global polo community. That was a great episode. We hope you had fun listening and learning about Oak Brook Polo Club's unique and storied history. If you enjoyed this episode, we encourage you to listen to others as we continue to celebrate this historic season. Thanks for stopping by, my friends, and hope to see you at Oak Brook this summer.